I am very privileged to be here both with you and with Lord Ballantyne. He and I had the opportunity this Saturday, some of you may have seen the little commercial that we did down in Tombstone. Well, 2 people did. That's 3 people. 50% improvement, just a matter of seconds. Anyway, Christopher was kind enough to join me down there. We conducted an interview, which in essence was a commercial or a plea on behalf of the cold case posse. I'm from Houston originally. I used to have a Texas accent, but over the last 4 days, my accent's changing very quickly. Not sure how to speak anymore. In any case, the more I'm around him, the more my shtick, my country boy accent seems to disintegrate. So it's a bloody thing after all. In any case, we went to Tombstone. It just happened to be Wyatt Earp days, and the reason we did that is that my book, Really O'Reilly, was released actually some months ago, and it's been split into 2 parts, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is available at my website, which is named after my previous second book, which is uncommonsense.now.com. And I have a few cards left, but anyway, if you can remember that, uncommonsense.now.com. And Part 1 of O'Reilly is available there. Part 2, which is the reason I'm mentioning this, will be released in another week or so. And the reason that I'm updating it is to include not only the recent court cases in Georgia primarily and New Jersey, there's another very important one pending in Alabama, which I may also have to add, but the final chapter is on the cold case posse, and it is entitled One Bad Hombre, America's Last Best Hope, Another Lawman from Arizona. And of course, I'm referring to the much loved and much maligned, unfortunately, Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County, Arizona. And of course, I'm comparing him in that chapter to the most celebrated sheriff in American history, none other than Arizona lawman, U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp. And I think that's a very appropriate comparison because Sheriff Arpaio, like his previous counterpart, is a very fearless man. And as Lord Ballantyne will tell you, he is a man of great accomplishment in the law enforcement community, many years of experience in both federal law enforcement as well as in his role as the Maricopa County Sheriff. So Lord Ballantyne was kind enough to go down there with me, and we in fact did an interview a stone's throw, if you will, from the OK Corral where the famous showdown took place. And I compare that showdown on Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock on the 26th of October, 1881, to that which is looming on the Sonoran Desert horizon even as we speak, the showdown between Sheriff Joe Arpaio and his cold case posse, headed by the Earp lookalike, Mike Zullo, which is mustache, Zullo lips. The showdown between them and the sitting president of the United States. The only difference is the stakes in this case are much higher than they were that day at the OK Corral. But I'm confident that the truth will prevail. We were a few minutes late getting here because Gary, or as I like to call him, W. This is Gary McConnell. Gary is Lord Ballantyne's facilitator, shall we say, and has arranged to bring him here to us. So he's GL, and Gary Wilmot is GW, or just W for those of us from Texas. He's a bit more conservative than his counterpart, the former President George W. Bush. But Nonetheless, I'm very thrilled to be here, and I'm going to talk about my book, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time quoting chapter and verse. I will tell you the theme, and the theme is that while I did not start out to write this book on the eligibility of the president, it was one of the topics that I wanted to take up with William James O'Reilly, Jr. You know him as Bill O'Reilly. It was one of the themes. There were 3 or 4, and but as soon as I got into that issue, and it's not unlike Christopher's own story with regard to the cold case posse, as soon as he heard it, he immediately, being a rather bright individual, saw that there was something here that was, as he would say, irregular. And indeed, it is irregular. So when I was watching the O'Reilly program, the No Spin Zone, and watching him spin mightily on the evening of February the 14th, 2011, just happened to be Valentine's Day, so I can remember that. He absurdly said that with regard to either the religion or the birthplace of the President of the United States, it would have, this is almost a direct quote, no bearing on any national policy. I don't know how many of you have seen the cartoon of the old country boy sitting there on his couch with his wife beater on and shotgun, and the television screen decimated on the wall. But that almost happened that night, except that I didn't have a shotgun. Nonetheless, I cried out, "You can't be serious." And actually my exact words were, "Oh, really?" Now, there is no religious test in the Constitution. A Muslim could, in fact, be elected to any office in the country.
I think he has.
Well, as a matter of fact, we already have. Well, excuse me. An openly, avowed or stated Muslim. But, and there's a Muslim congressman. But it would be highly unlikely that in the instance in which we are at war with radical Islam, that would take place. And so for O'Reilly to suggest or to state emphatically that it would have no bearing on any national policy was, in fact, outrageous. And then he went on to say it would not matter where he was born. And my immediate response, besides saying, "Oh, really?" was to say, if you have a problem with Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, Clause 5, take that up with John Jay. He's the one that saw to it, via George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, if you recognize those names. Jay was the first person to suggest that requirement to George Washington, who not only was the subsequent first President of the United States, and also formerly first Commander-in-Chief, but as you all know, the President of the Congressional or the Constitutional Convention. So John Jay, in a letter to George Washington on July the 25th, 1787, suggested to General Washington, or President Washington at the time, that it might be advisable, I don't remember his exact words, to require that the President, not the President, but the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, is the way he put it, be a natural-born citizen. So my response to O'Reilly was, don't take it up with any of us, take it up with those that wrote the Constitution and put that requirement in there. Because if the Constitution, as the supreme law of the land, can be ignored capriciously or at will, then in fact it means nothing. We no longer have what is known as the rule of law. The rule of law in our country, at least, is based on, one, the fact that we do have a written constitution that is the supreme law of the land. Number two, that all people are equal before the law. And three, no one, this is the corollary number two, no one is above the law. And yet we have a clear instance where the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the People's House, quite frankly, is in fact above the law. And we've seen that in every case that we've seen around the country. And of course, the citizens of the country, the people of the country, are considered to have no standing. Now that, frankly, is outrageous. And that is, in fact, a complete defiance to the rule of law and to our tradition of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. we are, according to Thomas Jefferson, the people are the ultimate authority, and according to Abraham Lincoln as well. And both the courts and the legislature are answerable to the people, and that's us. Now, I have to tell you that I for one, am very optimistic about the future of our country. I have no delusion that it will be smooth sailing, but I am very confident. I'm confident for one simple reason, well, really two reasons. And I'll put these in order. One is God, and I believe that He, in fact, raised up this nation and raised up the inspired men who wrote the Constitution, the greatest liberating document, governing document in the history of the world, and we can prove that by our own 200-some-odd-year history of freedom and prosperity. But two, I'm confident because of the people in this room. Now, you might think that you're a small group, and you are. As you know, Samuel Adams says it does not take a majority, but an irate minority willing to set brush fires in people's minds. And that's what we're doing, and that's what I want to encourage you to do tonight. We were, as W suggested, fashionably late. I'm usually late, but it's not fashionably late, I'm just not on time. He wanted to take Lord Monckton and me to the memorial at the Reagan Library, the gravesite. And so we had the privilege of going there, and to me it was a hallowed place. And so we were there, and on the inscription on the wall, I don't remember all of it. Lord Monckton probably could quote it verbatim. He's got a rather good memory. But it did say that in the end, or eventually, truth would prevail. And something to the effect that you all need to stand for truth, which was precisely what I am constantly encouraging people to do. Now, someone asked me a minute ago in the audience, why did I think that Bill O'Reilly was not willing to broach this subject? And frankly, if that's all that was his crime, I would probably let him off the hook.